Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last week of the challenge. Hello,
Woohoo!
Lacey. How are you? What's
Hello.
going on?
More importantly, we have to wish you a very happy birthday tomorrow within the
Oh,
community. How
thank
are
you.
you sharing how old you are?
Yeah, 33.
Oh, that's
Thirty-three.
your Jesus year.
Is that what it is this year?
It was the best year of my life, my Jesus year. 33. It's
Wow.
so big, so powerful. So like I do feel like there's a lot of symbolism around 33, but I do feel like it was the year that my consciousness really started to up level. Like it was a really powerful year.
I feel that in a big way. Like it's way more grounded and like, oh, this is what self love is. This is what it's like to set boundaries. This is, it's all starting to kind of connect. So, yeah, fun times. And hopefully after today, no more Mercury retrograde. So we won't have
I've
any.
had a big one. It's usually doesn't really, and it hasn't been in any bad ways or anything, but it's been so stereotypical that I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's experienced a version of that. And I'm so grateful for it going direct today. It is the shadow phase that gets me the most.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, what are the next 2 weeks? But yeah, anyway, but all is well here. So excited to talk about the last week of the challenge and wrap up the challenge. I feel like for myself, I manifested the thing if I go forward with it. So I'm like, oh holy shit, this challenge was really good. What about you?
It's so good. It's so funny because I think the more weeks of the challenge there are, the more manifestations that come through. And
Mm,
so I'm like, what else could come during this challenge? Like I feel like I manifested such a big one with our winter trip within the first 2-3 weeks. And we were putting together a survey just to see how everyone was liking the challenge. And I was like, Grace, you have to add what week of the challenge they manifested because I'm
oh, that's
so
interesting.
curious to know even a little manifestation, like when did things start popping off for people so they can even recognize their own patterns of like, ooh, the expanders week really helped me out or whatever it is.
I love that. I think that's so, I can't wait to see the data.
I know. I'm so excited. So tell us about, I'm sure everyone listening to the recent episode of find out what's blocking your manifestation. You shared about your farmhouse manifestation. Everyone loved the episode. I got the sweetest comments. It was so nice. Like it
Afterwards,
was
I
so
was
fun.
like, oh, because vulnerability is really hard for me. So I was like, ooh, I'll never re-listen to that episode, but awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny how for me, my process has really followed the challenge, so accordingly. And right when I needed it, the perfect tool has presented itself. So where I stand today is that I'm on the ping right now. After ping week, I followed the ping and came up here and visited the property. And it was really interesting because I didn't have that initial like, this is it, like
Mhm.
it's actually been sort of a wrestling as I've been here. And what I've been trying to determine, the thing that's really holding me back from like, this is it, is that which I was just expressing to Jessica. Like I've always been manifesting the Victorian farmhouse that's, on a little bit of land. You can see the ocean. Like I've been manifesting since seventh grade practical magic. That's what
Yeah.
I've been manifesting essentially, and
Amazing.
it's always been my dream and it will always be my longing until that happens. And what I've realized after this is the area, like there's no doubt as of this
Mhm.
moment, this is
Mhm.
the area. There's no doubt in my mind. It's like all the wild kismet things that are coming together. And I can't even remember like what I mentioned on that episode, but I just mentioned it on stories when I went in on Saturday, where it's so like to the craziest, weirdest stuff where it's in Albion, California, which is right by Mendocino. And
Mhm.
what that stands for when Sir Francis Drake was coming through, it's a word that represents Britain. So he named it after
Oh.
Britain, Scotland. It really has those cliffs and that feel. And then also, like, if you think of something like Murder She Wrote was filmed here, replicating Maine. So it's like, it's all the crazy, I mean, just crazy things from my list that are on this. It's nuts. So the biggest thing I've been feeling into, I'm like, is this the big shiny test? but knowing how to read energy so clearly, I'm like, oh, I know that farmhouse isn't right behind this. Like, I know that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how I know that is because I'm not expanded in it. I don't know anybody who's ever gotten one of those here, that's not in town, that has the land, that has the view, that, is private, because a lot of those were built right off of the highway. And so I realized, I'm like, so if I say no to this, if I walk away, and it's been made very, very clear to me by every local I've encountered, that a property like this one pops up very rarely, the one right now that I'm in escrow for,
Mhm.
and even more rarely ever is the farmhouse thing. And I went, okay, so if I walk away from this, I don't think it's some sort of magic dark reading the energy where all of a sudden, I'm gonna manifest that thing, because I realize I'm not expanded in it. Like, I don't
Mm.
know anybody who has that, or who's gotten that here, that's not a total tear down, or any of those elements. And I realized, oh, this is like, what I'm getting this place for is a deal. It's a big deal. Um, it's in the perfect location. It's my full list, but being the farmhouse, and it's like the perfect foot in the door, so that I have the place I've always been wanting. And then I'm basically here on the ground to expand myself, so that in the next 10, 15 years or whatever, when that thing pops up, I can do that. Or maybe that's in Scotland after Teddy goes to school or whatever. So
Mhm.
that's what actually feels a little bit more accurate. I'm still gonna like play into it and read into it, and I'll certainly walk away if the red flags present, etc. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm in the place of, is this a bridge, or is it the shiny, shiny carrot?
Okay, so I think this is such a good thing to touch on because a lot of people go through this where they're like, it's such a nuanced energetic, but it's like this checks every part of the core essence, except maybe this one piece. But the one piece is I don't wanna say it's a non-nego it's not like it's going to be a red flag, a cause for concern. It's not going to, cross a boundary, it's not impeding on a boundary or like a core wound, I guess, if you don't have that piece. It's part of your, like, authentic code more so. Um, but because you, like, very clearly are like, that Victorian piece is not right there. I'm
Mhm.
not that close because I don't have the expansion. Actually, like, running into the fire or not passing or I guess, yeah, like, not passing the test is, in fact, the thing that's gonna expand you and get you closer to the manifestation.
I don't, yeah, that's what I'm feeling into.
Yeah.
Like, because basically around this property itself, like, I've been waiting for the septic to fail, or the like
Mhm.
whatever, and there haven't been any red flags, like nothing. And that's where I'm like, so for instance, I keep referencing dating when I look at this, because that feels like something I have very mastered. Like, I know it can be like the smallest, little, tiniest red flag, and I'm out, because I know that my thing's right behind me. I know I'm expanded enough. I've seen enough of the relationships. I know what I want, etc. And so while I've been sitting with this place, um, it's really been like the red flags aren't there really at all.
Yeah.
And it meets every criteria I have. It still follows my authentic code, for everything that the farmhouse would
Mhm.
follow. And that's where I've really had to sit with, if I say no to this and I hold out for that farmhouse, that could take 5 more years. Like, it really could, because I'm not expanded in that piece. This is what I'm realizing in real time on this. And am I willing to walk away and wait another 5 years, or do I get my foot in the door, meet the community deeper, start to put the letter in the mailboxes? Hey, if you ever sell this place, call me, or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, really get to know people, and all of that. And is this my area for that long? So,
Mhm.
and this is really like where the market's at right now. This place I'm getting is a deal, and it's a really spectacular, incredible property, like down to crazy stuff that I've always wanted. It has a natural spring on it, that
Wow.
has a pump tank that you can pump up, and that could be where I take baths, or whatever. It's just crazy, the elements on it. And the other piece is, like, whenever we do bring in magnetic meetups again, it's a place we could vary. It has enough space in a meadow. We could very easily do that. Like, and that, so there's just a lot of pieces here where I'm like, if I want, and so for me, I've been wrestling. I'm like, am I settling? That's the thing.
Mm, mhm.
And and that's the new piece that I think eventually you and I will have to sit down on and like really develop out bridges a little bit more, because sure, in a way I am, right? It's not the place, but like when I compare this to dating, like let's say the person is calling in their thing, their person, but they've never seen this relationship that they want to be in. And they meet a person they have a connection with, and it's great. And it checks literally the whole list, but maybe one, not something like they don't want to commit or whatever, but one little element. Like I'm thinking back to my silly list at 25, it would be like long blonde surfer hair, like silly things. Um, would you leave that person? Would you ditch it? And it's like, if everything else is working out, you have the connection, or is that person your expander who's really going to take you there or turn into the thing you want? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's what I'm feeling into.
Going back, yeah, that's so interesting. Um, I think because the one, like, missing piece for yours is not a red flag. That almost is like, okay, I could someone wrote, "It's a bridge manifestation" in the chat.
Yeah. Well, I look back to Max, like it's a really, I've been looking at like my bigger manifestations in my life, and I look back to Max, and with Max, when I was manifesting that partnership, like being older was on my list, right? Like they had
Mm,
to be older than
mhm.
me. They had to be, I really wanted them to be a photographer or in like an editor or, videographer, director, like that. I really wanted that level of creativity. He was everything else on the list, like owned a house. See, that was like a big
Mhm.
part of it. Cause I remember my ex was like, how can we even put a kid through school? We don't even have money to buy a house, like that kind of stuff. And I was like, then this person can't have those obstacles. And I walked away from him a few times because I was like, he's younger than I am and he's in clothing. And so then I realized, through that process, when I would walk away and I would sort of date other people and go on dates, all I would think about was him the whole time. And
Mm,
then, so I'm like, is this also a version of that? Like maybe the universe knows better of what I want to need right now than I know myself. Some clear examples being, like speaking, my friend Morgan has a lot of close friends here, and so I've been meeting up with her friends, and we've been following each other on Instagram and stuff, so it's nice to finally meet the people, and I'll ask them questions not even alluding to this, and they'll say, a really interesting thing about people here who live closer to the coast, because where our place is a teeny bit inland. It's like a 3-minute drive to the coast, but like our place would actually get a little sunshine in the summer and stuff like that. And like, a big piece of that, she was like, you won't really see people near the coast with gardens or flourishing gardens because of the wind and the elements. And
wow.
so it's like interesting that maybe the universe actually knows better for me,
Mhm.
and not to like make this whole thing about this, but it's a really good, I guess, nuance and example.
Yeah.
I don't want to give people excuses is the big piece as well. I
Yeah.
don't want to, I don't want to give people excuses, but another interesting thing is a really cool couple lives here who started the hotel I'm staying at and a restaurant and a cafe, and they did the thing. They moved to town and they bought the house next to Murder She Wrote, the old Victorian, etc. And they just bought a house, right near where mine is in escrow. Like a lot of people, and another, couple that I met who bought here 20 years ago and raised their kids in Marin and then came back. They did the same thing. They were like, we wanted the ocean view with the old Victorian, and then we sold it and came out here. And so it's really
Wow.
interesting that I wonder, these are my expanders so far. It's interesting
Yeah.
that I'm
Well,
like, maybe the universe knows better.
I know, and maybe even this is the manifestation, but you have to be expanded to understand that it's not about the Victorian house anymore.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest lesson I'm being taught to truly expand further, and things that I want to do, in real estate with like the equity from all the other real estate, and how I want to build that portfolio. I think what I'm really being taught, and unblocking from my scarcity mindset of growing up is this doesn't have to be the end all be all. You can get another place and sell this anytime. Like, down the road, anytime. Like
Mhm.
that's the moment I think I'm being really expanded on, that it's like, hey, like, Lacy growing up with young single parents, like this isn't the end, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
the end. So there's a lot of magic working, and I'm also in a really surrendered place where I'm not afraid to walk away at all. So it's a
Yes.
beautiful, powerful place to be.
Oh, I love that. That's so
I know.
exciting. Oh my gosh, the
So
house.
I know, I know. How about you? And how about finishing up this challenge in, this last 2 weeks?
It's funny because I had the same, but mine was an actual test on these 2 home decor pieces, so
I've
I'm
seen that
sure.
on stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys can see we still have our old couch in here because we were like, we love the extra seating, and we're like, "Okay, we're gonna get rid of this, but we wanna find another great chair there and another great one here, and then, like, a side." I'm giving you the whole decor
Yeah.
setup. And another chair there, and there was a chair I had my eye on that's, like, a very, very expensive chair, hard to come by, like, is by this one designer, but it was, like, a quality piece, and I was like, "Okay, it might take a little longer to get, but, like, that or something better is, like, what my eye is on." And, for the side one, we were like, we want it to be comfy, we couldn't quite find, maybe, like, a love seat or, like, a lounger day bed, whatever. And, Six Penny has, the same one. I got my couch, similar thing, and it's on back order for, like, 16 weeks and
Yeah.
all this stuff, and I was like, "Okay, like, it's not the thing." And I go on Facebook Marketplace,
Six
and
Penny should be, like, sponsoring
they really
like,
should
also
at
these
this
things for
point.
us. Sorry, go ahead.
And I go on Facebook Market, I got the ping, and I go on Fa I was like, "I'll just check it." Like, I haven't checked in a while, I'll just see what's on there, and I searched Six Penny. And the freaking daybed is on there. Someone had it for like a month and it was too big for their place and they were selling it. And not only were they selling it that I could have right then and there, but they were selling it for almost half the price. And I was like,
Wow.
holy, this never happens. No one resells this furniture. Like, this is unheard of. And it's slipcover, so you can wash it and all that stuff.
Wow.
But it wasn't the right
Color.
material. It was the
Yeah, yeah.
wrong color. And I was like, oh, it's so close.
Yeah.
But it's the wrong thing, and I was talking with my mom about it, and she was like, "Why are you gonna pay any money for the one that you don't want?"
Oh,
Like,
I like
why
that.
like,
I
that
like that.
your lack mentality is saying,
Dude,
"Just
she's
because it's
killed
a
it on
good deal." I
this.
know,
She
she's
she
doing
went
so
from,
good.
like, being afraid to sell her house subconsciously to this is amazing.
I
She's
know.
killed the challenge.
She really has, and she was like, like, think about if you really want your chair, why do you have to get it on sale? Can't you just manifest, like, buying the one you
Mhm.
want when it is available? And I was like, you're so right, but it's such a juicy carrot. And then I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'm not going to get it. And then this chair, the one that I wanted, popped up on Facebook Marketplace, but it didn't have like the buttons and it was also like a fraction of the price. And I was like, oh, it's so close. And I was like, okay, wait, maybe the buttons are just ego. Let me think about it again. And I was like, no, damn it. Like, I really love the buttons. They remind me of like an old fashioned kind of home, like in my grandma's house and stuff. And I was like, I gotta say no. So that was
Wow,
it.
that's good.
Past those two is very hard. And then another, like, one of the home pieces is we were manifesting, like, this record player, and I had a specific one in mind I really liked that I thought was chic, and Daniel's boss gifted us a record player just randomly. It was like, "Here as a Christmas present, like, it's coming in the mail,"
Wow.
and I was like, "Amazing." It turns out it came yesterday. It was the exact one that
I
I
have the
had
chills.
on my list. I was like, "Daniel, this is what I saved." And he was like, "No way. Wait, what?" Like, it was just so bizarre of all the record
Wow.
players.
So
So,
you had passed those 2 tests and bam, that came.
came through for free too, like, not even,
Wow. I
like, total
know.
gift. So,
Like an
there's a
actual manifestation.
yeah, like,
Wow.
there's a lot of stuff moving around here. So,
That's awesome. Well
yes,
done. Very
good stuff.
cool. That's amazing. Well, shall we take questions? This is
Yes,
so exciting. I'm like, who else is
I
manifested?
know. Okay, let's see. This is the most requested question. My manifestations tend to come through when I work through the TBM triad, but also when I fully surrender. Any advice into melting and relaxing into that, or melt into that relaxing and releasing emotion?
Well, full surrender, I think we've covered that. I forget which podcast episode, but the energetic behind surrender is that you are expanded enough. It's the I don't give a shit anymore. Like
Mhm.
it's the
Mhm.
pace the place that I'm sort of in where it's like, oh, I could walk away at any minute. I don't care. Like who cares? It'll come when it comes. I know. And you can't force that. And what creates that is that you're unblocked enough and expanded enough because you just don't care anymore.
Mm.
You know it's gonna happen and come, you know? What would you add to that?
I would say same thing, and I think the dog, you're not in it when you have that dog paddling feeling. You have the like, "Oh, but I want it now," or like, "I want it to come now." When you're in that state, I feel like it's a very clear indicator that you have a little bit more unblocking, expanding, and I think also taking a look at, like, why the timeline is so important. Like,
Mm,
even thinking
mhm,
about the 2 items, I'm like, "Okay, it could be, like, 5 months, a year before another one pops up that feels aligned, or maybe it is the 12 to 16 weeks until the chair comes through, but I'm not in a rush."
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
I'm trusting every part of this process. I don't need it right now. My needs are taken care of. This is like a fun game almost,
mhm.
So,
Completely, completely.
I think falling into that emotion of it all.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So, do blocks need to be fully healed before seeing results? The challenge helped me recognize some major blocks, but I don't feel fully healed. They seem like a much longer process.
No, they don't have to be fully healed. The most important piece of it when you get to the root of it is, are you looping more in your worth now regarding it? So usually when, pain, shame, or programming happens, the what we imprint is I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, etc. And as you begin to discover it and find it and desensitize it, you'll get to a place where you can separate those, where it's like, oh, this happened, but I'm actually worthy and I am okay and I am lovable, and you'll start to loop more and more and more on that. And so and it takes time, like you say, it's through repetition and emotion that will then become the overriding neural pathway. So it doesn't have to be fully healed at all. And of
Mhm.
course, while you're simultaneously expanding more and more in ratio to that thing, that's when your manifestations can start to happen if you're taking aligned action around it. So not at all does it have to be fully healed. It just has to start to the narrative subconsciously starts to change to, I am worthy of this, I am good, I am lovable, I can have this. The I can have this, I deserve this comes from the expansion piece too. Like, oh, they have it, I can have it too, I deserve this, I can so that's like what's happening energetically beneath it.
Yeah, and I think with the blocks it's layers, or levels
Yeah.
almost. So it's like you're let's say you have your core wound, like I'm not good enough. You're not completely removing that core wound. It's just you're getting to the next level of healing with it. And that's, I think, probably why we say like 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months for your manifestation, because it's like, what is the layer of unblocking that's perceivable that I can match with my manifestation in the next year? So that's that next layer. It's like, what's the next layer of I'm not good enough healing that can connect with manifestations in that time frame? Because I think about, what you're calling in that you think is believable within this next year, you're a couple layers of unblocking from it. And then your next year, you're going to have another big thing that's going to require another level of unblocking. So it's like continuing that journey.
Completely. I completely agree. Yeah, I think that's why you don't see people go from 0 to 10 rapidly, because
Mhm.
it's like a building block. That's what expansion is. You're building on top of the other, on top of the other. And I think, yeah, I just think that's really a powerful way to look at it.
Mm.
But it's not to say like it's going to take forever for me to manifest. Like, I look at my journey of when I even put this work into the world, that was in 2015. And, it's like, it wasn't just like 2016. Anything was like what it is now, it's like building, you just build your life through that
Yeah.
process.
And your the expansion piece is so important because also your nervous system has to expand.
Hmm.
Having that new level and having that new reality, you have to almost adjust. Once you get up there, you're like, whoa,
Yeah,
okay, this is
I
who I
can hold
am
this much
now.
space.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
100%.
Agreed.
Okay. Uh okay. How do you know whether you need to unblock something versus it being a core part of who you are? Unblocking being quiet and shy versus like naturally introverted.
Hmm. I feel like when you know yourself, you know, like, what's truly authentically you and what's not. Like, I even look at myself, I'm somebody who loves to be alone and can be alone for long periods of time and just think all day, and it's beautiful that there are these systems like astrology and human design and stuff that are reaffirming with it, so that's really helpful to be like, "Oh, I'm not weird." That could be like, I'm antisocial or I'm, introverted, etc. But yeah, I don't like I know then I know like a piece of me that's programming is controlling. I'm
Mm,
controlling because of safety and having to control my environment, when I was young. So it's like I can see very clearly what's been programmed into me versus innately my characteristics. And so I think it's really important that if you're even asking the question, like these qualities about yourself, really looking at them to go, where there are things in my childhood and upbringing or religion or beliefs or societal or media that ask me to shut myself down, or is that a part of who I am? And if that's a part of who I am, it's actually unblocking all of the societal programming around it that makes it not normal. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So that's the work there. And then owning that piece and expanding who are your expanders who are also like that, and successful in their lives and respected for it. So I think it's just getting very clear on this thing I'm questioning. Was this programmed into me, or has this always been who I've been, since I was little, and how I feel inside when I'm quiet? So
Mhm.
that's the way that I would look at that. And then really own that if it's who you are, do the unblocking around the narrative around it and the expansion around it, and start to really own it and honor it.
Yeah. I think even, with this person saying shy, quiet, or introverted, well, when you have those moments where you're feeling introverted, do you feel good or do you feel
Mhm.
stuck?
Like, do you feel
In
nourished?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it replenishing you? Does it feel like, "Oh, this feels good, but I shouldn't be like this?" What feels natural when you're really, really checking in? And you can tell which version is kind of ego dancing and people pleasing and, which one is natural. Even for me, like, I'm Cancer rising in astrology, which historically one of the things I guess as part of it is like they present kind of quiet and shy, but with my Scorpio moon, Capricorn sun, I'm a lot more energetic, a generator, all of those things. And so being shy is actually how I presented a lot of times when I first meet people. Like I'm very quiet. I'm kind of just like watching the rooms, feeding on the energy, seeing what's going on. And I was kind of embarrassed about that, but for a while I was like, "Why am I so intimidated? Why can't I just be myself?" And I was like, "Oh, wait, because that's naturally how I first meet people. I need to kind of feel the room, feel safe, and then I can show people who I really am." And
Mhm.
so it's kind of like accepting, no, I'm not like that all the time, but what is the shadow that I feel that I have to, be one way all the time as well?
Mhm. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Good example.
Yes. Um, okay. What is the difference between manifesting and just buying something? I get so confused when I try to put myself first with a purchase, but I also feel financial lack.
Well, actually, I think your recent, couch manifestation is a really good example of this. I think you would have a good insight on this.
Yeah, I think this is so funny. Like my friend, I'll be like, I manifested a couch. They're like, you bought a couch. I was like, you don't understand the energetics because
Yeah.
the older versions of me would not have spent that money on myself. And there was I think with any purchase is what's going on behind the scenes. Am I doing this to self soothe? Am I doing this to be liked, to be validated? Am I doing this because this brings me joy and this is a way I can honor myself? If you are in a financial burden, going out and spending tons of money on an item that's going to put you into debt, that isn't honoring yourself because you're not taking care of your financial needs. Like it's so nuanced for each person. It's not just going out and buying this item, is what does that item represent? How do you feel beneath the surface about it? And what has your behavior historically been with purchases? Are you empowered to buy what you want as you need it? Do you overbuy things when you're feeling stressed out or not good enough? Like looking at those patterns to get clear on what is purchasing as a manifestation. And also when it comes through, at least for me, there's some sort of kismet thing with it where I'm like, "Whoa, that was really wild. It came through in that way or in that timing." And especially having expanders around, like having expanders that literally had the same couch so I could see what it was like to sit on it. I was like, "Okay, this is clearly the item that I'm supposed to be connecting with."
Yeah, that's exactly how I was going to answer it too. I think the bigger thing, we're addressing with this question is it's not about if you buy the thing, have you manifested it? Like through our process, it's really about have you unblocked your lack? You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
like when I look at my manifestation list from last year, I manifested most everything on it. Some of those items were like bought. So a great example is I'm not getting this house for free. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not for free. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But I've manifested all of the elements to be capable of connecting with that house. Am I getting a deal on it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Are there a lot of advantages in my favor? Sure. So, are there a lot of kismet pieces to it? Absolutely. But I think the most important thing here is all, like we talked about earlier, like all of the building blocks over the 5 years, really 4.5 years that I've been calling in this farmhouse that have gone into this manifestation. So,
Mm,
whether this is the one or I wait and walk away and it's another one. It's really you're unblocking and expanding out of the lack around things um, to increase the energetics of connecting with what you want easily and whenever you're wanting to.
mm.
If you take money and the material item out of it.
Mhm, mhm. Love that. Okay. How do you know if someone is a test regarding to dating? Seems important to have compassion for their growth, but also not to settle. I don't want to fail this one. LOL.
Well, I think going back to those questions that we created,
Yeah. I take it through the trust or the test
test.
checkpoints. But one thing, and a friend asked me this yesterday, and she was like, "Well, I asked my partner to change and certain behaviors that didn't work for me and was setting my boundaries. And they were like, yeah, I'm willing to grow and work on things, but I feel like you're like trying to change me at the core essence." And so I think, and they had been dating a little bit longer. So it wasn't red flag right in the beginning. They had built sort of this dating history. And I think the biggest thing with dating stuff is if you're one, you shouldn't be trying to work on it together in the very beginning. In the beginning, it should flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then after that, if you're in dating and you're at that kind of stuck point, are both people willing to work on their own shit? Like, are they able to look at it? And so if you're having compassion for them growing, that's fine. But are they putting in the work to actually grow? And are they taking action to actually grow? And if they're not, then don't settle.
Agreed.
All right, let's see. Um, hmm,
And taking it through the test, yeah, your subconscious is going to be pretty open.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking too, someone had mentioned something about having difficulty knowing, if a job was right for them or if it was their time to leave a job and discerning. They like, I can't tell if it's fear or intuition, like it's so close tied together. Do you have any insight or tips for when you're almost like your fear is overriding you being able to listen to your intuition?
Fears overriding you to be able to listen to your intuition. How do I do that when I'm in that space? Usually, I'll get to a fuck it place where I don't care anymore if I stay or go. Like I take out all the variables around that are all over the place, and I look at it from a place of um, is this still like like let's take the job example, like is this still in alignment? Am I happy? Am I joyful? Is it feeding me? Am I growing with it? All that stuff. um and if not, then then it's really clear what you have to do
Mhm.
to go, you know what I mean? So it's kind of that, like if you take all of the ego out of it, is it lighting you up or not? You know, is it the place that's kind of the stuff I get to. So first, in order to even like think clearly and hear clearly, I have to get to a place like what would be the worst case scenario? Like I have to go through all the things.
Mhm.
Like, what's the worst case scenario if I go or if I don't go? Like, let's look at both of those so we can just get that all out of the way, and then I can just get ego out of the way and like touch in with my heart.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really good tip of just recognizing, okay, what's the fear on both ends of this happening?
Hmm.
Move through that, and then now that the worst case scenario is out of the way, okay, we can cope, we'll be safe no matter what, but without that, what am I being called to?
Totally.
And that's for that dating question as
It's a
well.
good one for the dating question. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay. Uh, People are up leveling. That sounds fantastic. Great job, guys. Um, uh, okay. What does it mean when you take aligned action on a ping, but nothing comes of it?
Well, for me, usually I will find that on that ping, I was expanded in some way I needed to be. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's truthfully what I think pings are. Yes, they're communicating you to the next step, but like I'll take, for example, when like I came up with radical pings earlier this year and or end of last year, and I started writing them down and I started following them. Like, I'm going to travel, I'm going to do this. And while on those places, I was getting so expanded in so many ways of like design things I would do to another house, and things that like I actually desire or don't desire. So it's like I find on pings I'm usually being expanded. It's another
Mm-hmm.
form of expansion for me.
I think too, a lot of times, even the quick ones where I'm like, I'm getting a ping to go to a certain coffee shop, and I get there, and maybe there's a celebrity that I really admire is getting their coffee at the same time. Is that helping in, a specific manifestation? Not necessarily, but it is creating a communication channel with the universe of like, okay, I'm guided and led. I'm around people that I think are influential.
Expanded.
Exactly.
Like,
So
yeah,
that I think they are. Mm, eh, and it will ultimately tie in, right? So, like, if I go like, I went to the coffee shop the other day, saw Austin Butler, who is the guy who played Elvis, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool." And I was like, "Why is it so cool?" Like, I don't necessarily wanna be this guy's friend, or I'm not in the acting field, like, what about this is so important to me? And I'm like, "Oh, one of my authentic code is impact." He made a big impact by playing this movie and, being in this leading role, and he really committed to this work, and he just put everything he could into it, and it made a huge impact. And even though that field isn't what I want, it still was showing me like, oh, people of impact are around you.
hmm, hmm,
Like you're
love
you're
it.
good. So I
So
think yeah, go ahead.
expansion. This
Mhm.
expansion. So, like,
Mhm.
usually, I think that's something that people can see, when they follow pings, but it's not like at the end of that's the partner.
Mm.
There's usually something in it that you're expanding or growing through or having aha moments and things like that. That's what I find I usually feel on pings if there's not the manifestation at the end of it.
Mm. Love that. And I think it makes it easier for people when they follow them to not have perfectionism of,
Mm,
is it gonna lead me here? It's just like allow it to give you what you need by following it.
totally.
Um, okay. When you have a huge manifestation come through, do you like to keep your momentum going or take time to settle into it, reflect, and pause the work?
I think the more seasoned someone becomes at manifesting, it's kind of like what do I equate it to? It's like when you first what would it be? Like you first do drugs or like you try a thing you've never done and it's cool and fun. And it's like, oh, I want to do more of that. That's exciting. Like people get into that like young soul energy. Like it's really, but I think the more seasoned you become in it, you stop even thinking. Like me, I don't think about like okay, and then I want to manifest this and I want to move on this momentum. It really just becomes a flow where
Mm,
like I don't really put a lot of thought anymore into what I want to manifest. I know I wrote a list a bit ago, it's percolating, I'm living my life, and how I live my life is a very integrated version of this work. And and I think also the more seasoned you become, you're and through unblocking, you there's less need to accomplish and have
mm,
to feel fulfilled.
mhm,
You just are. And in that, more fulfillment is coming. May it be material, emotional, spiritual, all the ways. So it's fine. Like if you're in that energy, don't let it discourage you if and you're not manifesting, and it's like just know that you will become like the more integrated you become, you start to just live from a place of integration and flow and don't really think about it and your goal it's not like crazy goal setting and stuff like that anymore because it's all happening, it's all unveiling.
mm. I think, um, in the I think when I had my first big manifestation come through, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, there's magic. I could be tapping into this all the time. Like, I gotta
Hmm.
keep going." Exactly what you were saying, kind of that, like, really excited, almost like addictive sort of energy. And then you get to a place where, like with this person, they're like, can I settle into this and reflect? Like, you kind of take those moments naturally because you're not like almost dog paddling for the next hit of manifestation magic. You're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, okay, we're in this dance. It's always happening. It's always coming. Things are going to come in different ways." And I think even just changing your mindset that you are always manifesting, like looking at your tests and triggers at all time, looking at the little things that come through, look at the way that your
Hmm.
pings are coming through. It's a lifestyle. It's not
Totally.
an
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah, agreed,
Um,
agreed. Yeah, it just becomes your integrated way of living the same way, like going on a walk every day and
mhm,
brushing your teeth every day. And you're not like, for me, I'm not like, what were my tests today? What were my, it's just like I recognize them as they come up, and I
mhm.
go, oh, that was my I was expanded by that. Wow.
I think that's why the challenges are so helpful because if I go on a long stretch when I don't track as much, I'm
Hmm.
like, there's one thing and it's been taking a long time to come through. Let me get
Hmm.
intentional. And then when I
Hmm.
take that to like a challenge,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, great. Got it. We're back in
Yeah,
flow
it
again.
is right. It's good to have those touch points for sure. I agree.
Yeah. Um, oh, this is a big question. I got a lot of DMs too, but someone said, I'm not sure what aligned action to take. What could this mean for me in terms of next steps? What if I don't know the action to take? What tips would you have around non clarity there?
I think like do the aligned action deep imagining. Like, you
They
know what
they
I
said they
mean?
did it and they had nothing come up.
Nothing. I would say, okay, like for me, when that's going on, I look around, I'm like, what are things I'm afraid of that I know I need to do? What are
Mhm.
things that I like, where do I need to clear space right now, et cetera. And then another thing I'll do, when I'm doing my list, I only really do a list and then check it with the challenges. Like that's like those are my touch points. And so I'll create a list and that will be my running list until the one of the challenges. And when I'm making that list with each item, I'll go, how expanded am I? What's the aligned action needed here? What's the unblocking needed here? So that's really helpful is to like look at specific manifestations and see what is my aligned action needed here. Usually they're pretty clear. Like it's, I would say usually things are pretty clear, especially when they're big things.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, those are sorry, I'm getting text from Max. I'm like, beat it. Those are ways that I approach it, but also don't force it. Like if nothing's really presenting, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
what would you say to that? Because trying to think, how we always say, like, have unblocking expansion and aligned action, in motion at the same time. The aligned action piece is like what's needed in direct physical form action comparatively to the unblocking and expansion with what you're calling in. And I think if you look at each manifestation, you'll usually see aligned action decently clearly. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
like, what are you fearful of? What do you need to do? Where do you need to clear space? You know, that kind of stuff. What boundaries do you need to set? What tests do you need to pass? That's the aligned action piece.
So I think one like other way to kind of look at it, and I was talking to my mom about this with her house calling in. She's like, what action can I take around the house? And I'm like, I feel like you took all the action you can take around the house.
Mm,
Like you got the realtor, it's on the market, you cleaned up the house, you moved everything out of the house, like all the action that you needed to take towards it, that is done. And I think the last piece of action in regards to, expanding on blocking align action is align action in regards to the limiting belief block that's blocking the
mhm. Mhm,
manifestation.
mhm. I was just
So,
gonna say, like, it bounces back to unblocking and expanding at that point.
mhm. And then it's like, okay, if you are unblocking, let's say not good enough, then what are the other ways that have nothing to do with the house that you're communicating that you're not good enough? And how can you do the opposite? And what actions do you need to take there? So, like for her, I was so proud of her. She had on her list that she wanted this new vacuum for her new place. She has
This is
never
big. Yeah.
never bought herself a vacuum before. She always got it as a gift or for someone else or whatever. And she was like, no, I'll do it once the house sells. And she was like, no, this is it.
Mm.
I'm good enough to have the nice vacuum now. I have the money for it. I can do it. I'm getting the vacuum. And so that was her aligned action that actually connects back to the house selling.
Yeah, like taking your lack away. I love that.
Mhm.
That's a really good, point of when it feels like there's nothing else, what are the other little ways in your life you can create situational magnetism in that
Mhm.
moment? I love
Mhm.
that.
So good. Um okay, we'll do a couple more and then we'll give a little tip for post challenge. Okay, if you find you have a missing piece, what if you have a missing piece through all three? So we have our missing piece section this week, expanders unblocked and align action. They're missing something in each section. What step to take from there?
Start checking them off.
Yeah.
Pick which place you wanna start and start going for it, you know? Um, and it's cool because some people have to be in the space where they're in the magic dark and there's not much they can do. How lovely that you actually have actionables that you can do. So there's things within your control to be working through and going deeper. I like to look at it that way. But yeah,
Mm.
you dig down, get in there, start doing it all.
Yeah. I think there's some good actionables in that missing piece section, but if you want to go back to the expander section of the workshop,
Mhm.
go in and do that. If you want to go back to the unblocking section or go through the DIs for a couple of weeks with one core theme or root, go do that. Same with aligned action. You can keep popping back into each of these pieces as you're going through the process and recognizing, ooh, okay, I could do a little bit more in this area.
Love it.
Okay. Oh, 3-year pathway member here. This is their first challenge. They're definitely in the magic dark right now. Any
Awesome.
tips for surrendering and patience?
I'll let you answer that because I feel like I always say the same things.
Yeah, I mean, I think we give a lot of tips in the workshop. It's really one thing I think is cool now is that because we had that authentic self DI and with those journal prompts too, you really saw all of your joy and true essence. And I think almost finding a list from that, what are the things that bring me the most joy? How can I honor myself? How can I show up for myself? Obviously, Magic Dark, you can still be unblocking, expanding, taking aligned action, but rooting into the joy of it's almost like you wanna achieve the mindset of, "Okay, I know it's coming, I'm not in a rush, all is good, let me enjoy and live my life," what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, you basically and, like, the big piece is, like, if you wanna be actionable during that time, what are more, tests I can you know what I mean? Like, what are more
Mhm,
ways that I can unblock? What are more aside from the same thing we always say, like we're saying, is, like, stay in your joy, stay in your authenticity. Don't let stuff make you trip. If it makes you trip, do unblocking on it and get back into that space. Like, keeping yourself boundaried so people can't weigh in on what's going on. But like what I like to do in that space too is where can I take more aligned action? Where can I unblock? Are there little tests I should be passing? Where can I clear space? Where can I set boundaries, etc.? Like that just brings more magnetism and lets me communicate deeper to the universe. Like I'm not messing around. I'm here. I'm showing up, and like I'm ready for this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of I mean, it is a really magical time. Like you're in such a good spot if that's where you're at. Um, don't be afraid of it and don't be afraid of feeling anxious or like, uh-oh, I had a scary thought of, oh my gosh, what if it doesn't come through, or a fear. Just feel that feeling through a DI, like through feel that entire emotion. Cause I remember when I was in a magic dark, I was like, "Oh no, I had a scary thought today that like it wasn't going to come through, or it's going to take so long," or you start to have those doubts and fears. That's normal. You're still changing that subconscious architecture. Obviously, we don't manifest from our conscious thoughts, so like feel your feelings on that. And don't be afraid if that pops in, just go in and do a DI on it.
Totally.
Okay, let's do one more. Mm, let's see. Kind of answered so many of these. I think I think w- I guess one other theme that I've seen come up a lot. One thing I've seen come up a lot is when people are in that transitional period, they're, let's say, in their test job or relationship, and they know they want to go to the next thing, but they're not expanded and unblocked enough to leave. Specifically, people who are feeling financially strapped. I've seen that come up a lot. So if you're building your FU fund, they're in their job, that they know is not aligned. It's like there's almost a anxious energy to jump off the cliff and
Mhm.
leave without setting up everything in the meantime. Is there any tips or advice you have for someone who's like, okay, I'm going to do my expanding, I'm doing my unblocking, taking a line action for that, setting up the next thing, but I just can't leave the situation I'm in at the moment. But
Mhm.
it's almost like they feel that being there is just so antithesis to their self-worth. Like, they're like, "Oh, if I was in my self-worth, I wouldn't be at this job, but, like, I have to
Mhm.
be here for financial constraints," or whatever it is, as they're up leveling. Any tips for that person?
I would say use the opportunities that you find triggering or unhappy, or whatever the things
Mhm.
are, and use those to your advantage to unblock right now. Like that's the big. It's like when you're in the relationship that you are too afraid to leave or should leave or can't leave because of X, Y, and Z. It's like you use that tension and that point of your edge to do all the work you need to do in order to get out of there. Like, don't tune out, don't bypass, don't numb out to TV, and stop complaining to friends. Stop whatever
Mhm.
you would do, or whatever. Like, take that through the work. That's what's going to speed it up or change your circumstances.
Mm. Is there
That's how I would
ever
approach it.
Is there ever a point at which, I guess Amanda and Heather and Sawa touched on this on the last one, but like overstaying their welcome, like if it's an expander relationship or an expander job, is there a point at which they're signaling to their self worth because they are settling that it's low? You know?
Well, I would say, like, if you have all of your all of your things aligned, you'll know when it's time to jump off the cliff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think a really good answer to that is, if you don't have a fuck you fund, and you're not expanded enough and unblocked enough, the universe is presenting you with where you're at. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So if you're
Mhm.
feeling like your self-worth is so different, that's just ego, because your self-worth
Yeah.
is where you're at. Like
Ye-
that's why your reality is what it is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
it's like you have to kind of instead of, you know, exhausting your energy, like talking to all your friends or talking to your partner or like spending all your time looking for another job, whatever the things are, that's all, um, those are all just other forms of numbing out like you would TV and stuff, rather than
Mm,
taking that through the work, you know, and really, really honing in and digging down, you know, because the reality is showing you where your self-worth is, you know.
mm,
And I think a lot of people can get into the place where they're like, I know I'm worth more than the and all, and that's
mhm,
just ego too, because
mhm,
you would be there if you were, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think really it all comes back down to like unblocking, expanding, aligned action, set yourself up, take your attention and whatever through the work.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really good note, especially around um recognizing the ego component of it. Like, okay, if your self-worth feels stifled here, are you taking all of the other action, in your free time to build the FU fund, to take the aligned action to reach out to other people, to expand, unblock, etc. And if you're not, well then it's not matched.
No.
Yeah.
It's just a narrative then, you know?
Mhm.
That's all
Mhm.
it is. So, I also think, like, people have to get really that's why I think authentic self is so important. Like, you really need to know yourself, because if you're validating yourself through all of these external things,
Mhm.
um, but you're not doing anything to change that, you know, like if someone's validated because they go to the next job or they get the better partner or the whatever, um, like the universe is showing you where you're
Mm.
at. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like that, I don't know
Mhm.
how to energetically make that a little bit more clear. I would get out of the ego a little bit more and get in touch with myself a little bit more. I would stop it all out here and I would put it in here a little bit more and
Mm.
start really focusing, because that energy you're talking about reminds me of when I was an actress. Like that energy where you're like, well, I want the Academy Award winning movie and I want the whatever, you know, and it's like, but that's not right for me. Like, right, you know what I mean? So
Mm.
there's a really specific energy when we're like that. And it's a different thing when you're like really unhappy in a job, you know, like you're really like you're so unhappy there. It's a really toxic situation, or same with relationship. Um, that's showing you in a different way how your self-worth is. But like to me, it's like just getting really clear with reality a little bit more and who I am and
Mhm.
where I am and what makes me happy, etc. And if I'm unhappy in something and I desire something else,
Yeah.
like use that and do the work to go somewhere else, like get to somewhere else. You know what I mean? But don't take the time like putting it all out here. It's just another form of I remember that so well with actors and acting. Everyone's like, it's just all out here. And that's what sometimes will signal to me. I'm like, oh, this is just ego. It's all just
Mhm.
ego. You know what I mean? So it's two ways to look at it. Am I really unhappy? Is it really toxic? And if I'm here and I just know it's not aligned anymore, it's kind of the same answer for both. Like get down to work.
Yeah, and in a weird way, even though the job or the person or whatever may not be aligned, blaming that as the reason you don't have the next thing. There
Oh,
is there
yeah.
there is there is an element of needing to clear a space and needing to jump off the cliff and leave. Obviously, that's going to create
Totally.
magnetism, but if the only reason that you don't have it is because this thing, then you really got to take inventory of like, wait, what ways am I playing a role in everything else going on, and what ways am I not doing the work and projecting
Totally.
my blocks onto just this one thing where I actually have work to do on my side of the street.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. That's just ego versus reality, in my opinion.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I hope that
Sharing
makes sense
tips.
to people.
Yes. Okay, so what are your, we have the Radical Pings workshop that will be launching in February.
I
Spoiler
know. I'm
alert
really
for
excited for
everyone
that.
here.
Really
Um,
excited.
yeah, so everyone who, no matter where you're at the challenge, Hopefully, these manifestation stories are inspiring you. Go into the community group. People are manifesting like crazy. See the expanders, get the motivation you need to finish out the challenge. I'm telling you, it will be so transformative to just keep up with the challenge, finish out no matter where you are at, even if you have to take it slow. We'll have it open until March 1st. So the,
Oh, wow, I thought it
very
was
end of
mid-February, so that's awesome.
yeah, so you have full time. Like if you start today, day 1, you'll be able to finish in full. And then in February, we are launching Radical Pings. It's a little mini energetic workshop. Lacey, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is for to me, this is fun, radical pings to look at because I think it's not something we all like. We're always like, follow your pings, look at in the last place you really have to engage with pings or in how to manifest. And it's like, um, it can feel pretty blasé with the
Mhm.
process, like you kind of just lose it and you're like, oh, that was a ping. Whereas radical pings, the intention there, I did it for myself recently because I just kept getting pings and not doing anything about them. So I created this to be like, why am I not doing anything about these? And so to me, it's like a real touch point with pings. It's like a real actionable with pings. And to really get to the root of like, why am I not following this? Let me track all the pings I've been having and get to like, why haven't I followed them? Can I follow them? What's right now? What's a little bit later? And so for me, I think it was a really big stamp on postpartum. It was
Mhm.
like, oh, now I'm ready to get out of that energy and like move energy again, be myself again, like really follow what's calling me. And yeah, it was really magical. And I think it's really played a really big role into being in this position right now as well with manifestation because I think what it communicated to the universe was like, "Oh no, I'm here again. I'm ready to play again. And let's go. Like, let's do this." So I think that's
Yes.
what people have to look forward to after finishing the challenge. It's like, okay, now what? And now it's like, okay, now let's follow these.
100%. And I think it brings so much magnetism, like we said, not just because you're doing that aligned action, but because of the expansion piece of taking, following these pings.
Agreed.
Yes. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the challenge, enjoy the rest of the challenge if you're finishing out. This has definitely been our most successful challenge just by the feedback and messages from all of you guys and how quickly you all have been
Awesome.
manifesting. So proud of you. Just so inspired to see so many people come together. I love when we have these community activations because it really feels like we're all in it together and it makes such a difference. So thank you guys for being a part of it and love you all.
Yeah, see you guys. Happy birthday, Jessica. Have a
Thank
great
you.
birthday. And
Thank you.
yeah, we'll be